people who are beneficiaries of other forms of privilege, but they are without wealth, they make the mistake of denying their privileges, their other types of privileges, because they don't have wealth. So you can have different forms of privileges without having wealth. They're all independent. They're not mutually exclusive necessarily. So Hi, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are familiar, for those of you who don't, I invite you to like, subscribe, and share. This is JJ Gat. Those of you who are familiar with this channel, to do a deep dive into the different types of privileges that exist in the United States and in the world generally, and how those privileges can impact digital entrepreneurs, online startup creators, and folks who are making things and reaching out to various different people through social media online, and how the privileges impact your ability to grow and scale your business as fast as possible. So there are about 4 or 5, maybe 6 or 7 different privileges I had planned to go through. So what I decided to do is to instead interweave the latest pop culture topic that's on the lips of a lot of people, well, it was last week anyway, into the discussion of privilege because it's timely. So the pop culture topic that I'm going to talk about is the scandal from last week called Operation Varsity Blues, which essentially is an endeavor between the United States Internal Revenue Service and the United States Federal Bureau of Investigations, the FBI. They worked together to crack down on this huge scam. And the purpose of talking about these privileges is not necessarily to shame people who have them or to discourage people who don't have these privileges. It is for 2 reasons. One, to build awareness. So you're aware that having these privileges or lack of access to the privileges mean you have to be more resourceful. Use your other attributes, other skills, or be different and differentiate yourself to make up for the fact that you don't have these privileges available to you. And the second reason why is not just so you can be aware and also be resourceful, but also so you can be mindful of different people out there that you may encounter selling different packages and would say, well, this is what I did. We did X, Y, and Z, and we got this result. So purchase our package or follow our path, and you will have a similar result. Because a lot of times those other privileges actually do impact the ability for people to grow fast. And someone who tells you that you can just grow fast or just do what they do may not be telling you the behind the scenes stories, and you may not be aware of something that's unique to them that you may not have, which may make your journey a little bit harder. So that's the benefit. That's the purpose of it, not to discourage you, but just to make you fully aware. There's wealth privilege. As those of you, there's a saying that says money can't buy happiness, and we know that whether you are clinically depressed and have mental health issues, or whether you are strained in your life in other ways, independent if you have lots of wealth, if you have problems, you're going to be unhappy. However, the fact remains is that wealth does allow you to buy your way to get a lot of things you need that can make you happy, so including therapy. But in the digital online world, wealth allows you access and opportunity and gets doors open for you and allows you to exploit different resources freely. As we can see with Olivia Jade, she has a popular YouTube channel and she's doing pretty well. However, because of her parents being her mom being a celebrity, her father being a really popular designer, Mossimo, who made a lot of clothing for the Target brand, she was able to use her resources or wealth to perhaps position her channel or perhaps get to grow pretty fast, or possibly. It may not necessarily be the case. However, if you're not someone who is a celebrity or have a pretty face and you have money, you can purchase staff to help support you build your business and grow your business. And so you can take an idea, or you can take a concept, or you can take a channel, or you can take a sort of prototype to market faster with wealth, and with also resources that come with wealth and access that come with wealth. So that's one obvious form of privilege that's undisputed that exists. And there's, a lot of, and the problem with that form of privilege actually is beyond just that it's, it's not necessarily unfair, but it's just that it gives you an advantage, is that people who are beneficiaries of other forms of privilege, but they are without wealth, they make the mistake of denying their privileges, their other types of privileges, because they don't have wealth. So you can have different forms of privilege without having wealth. They're all independent. They're not mutually exclusive necessarily. So the first one is wealth, and obviously Olivia Jade's mom and dad are wealthy, and she's wealthy, so she had that privilege. So that's the first one. And the second one, I'm gonna skip skin privilege for a second and go to this and talk about pretty privilege. So what pretty privilege is, it's people who are attractive. There have been studies in academia that says that people who are attractive, in the criminal context anyway, are given less charges. They're given less sentencing. They're not even convicted as a similar rate as people who are unattractive, with the thought being that people just for some reason don't want to believe the worst in someone who's attractive, and so they're willing to excuse their transgressions because they're like blinded by the fact that this person's attractive. And for those people who are attractive, they can use that to their benefit all their lives. When I was working at the law clinic at Georgetown University Law Center, we had a student one semester who was very, very attractive. Name was Stephen. Hi, Stephen, if you're watching this. And Stephen was so good looking that when we would take him to client meetings, the executive directors and the secretaries would fall over themselves trying to get his number for their daughters, and people were just like, all the other classmates were just swooning over him. He was a really nice, humble guy. I'm sure he was aware of his attractiveness, but he really just didn't pay any mind. But it was interesting, as from an outsider perspective, to see all these people really like going out of their way to appease this guy. So I was like, wow, his life has got to be exponentially easier because of his attractiveness, that doors are just going to open for him and people are just going to be more accommodating to him because of his attractiveness. 2020 did a series of experiments. I remember years ago when they had some woman of average attractiveness stranded by the road, and they filmed it, and cars were just zooming by her, and they had another woman who was like really attractive, and within like 1 second of her getting out of her car, cars were like pulling over to say, hey ma'am, do you need some help? So if you're attractive in real life, it really opens door for you. Now in the digital world, the way attractiveness helps you is that it allows, I think, you to grow faster. I know I used to watch a series of videos of how to grow your Instagram following, and these videos would say, oh, we just did this and this and this and this, and we just posted interesting videos for 20 days, and then we had this, and then our following grew. But when you look at the videos they're posting, it was usually of a white female. She was usually thin. She usually had like long blonde hair or long pale hair, and she was very attractive. And then the videos she was posting were aspirational, but I just can't help but wonder if someone else who didn't have those same physical attributes posted those exact same videos, would they be able to grow and scale their Instagram following as quickly as she can? And just I know growth mindsets all play into factor of this, and so you should never ever look at what someone else has and say, well, I don't have those things, so I can't do it. I understand that. However, you have to be naive to not believe that people follow people based on their attractiveness level. And so even when you look at the phenomenon with the fitness, there was an article on this recently, fitness Instagram or fitness has been highly sexualized for people like Jen Selter. So they're doing these exercises, but they really have the camera aimed on their derrieres, and so they're really not necessarily selling their squats, they're selling their butt. And so and then those people who do that, and they have a certain physicality and physical look and appearance and the traditional idealized version of attractiveness, they're going to do much, much better in this space. So for those of us who don't have it, those people who are not as attractive or don't have those similar features or attributes, we have to differentiate ourselves in a different way that's more, maybe a little bit differently substantive. I don't want to knock them or knock their hustle, whatever they're doing, all the power to them. But that just says if you're doing this space, you have to be mindful that, one, you may not grow the same way as someone else because you're not similar situated to them, but that doesn't mean you can't differentiate yourself. So the second privilege, in which Olivia Jade has, she's a really pretty, attractive little girl, and so she had all these followings. So in addition to being a celebrity, daughter of a celebrity, and having maybe access and wealth and resources, she had the ability to be attractive. So while she's posting herself on this yacht, which is aspirational on its own, but she's still good, easy on the eyes to look at. So she's going to grow and she's going to get attention. So that's the second one, is pretty privilege. Okay, third and finally, skin privilege, and that's the one that's called white privilege. It's very controversial. I first came encounter with the term. There's a professor at Wesleyan University named Peggy McIntosh. So she wrote this essay called Unpacking the Invisible Knapsack. What that meant is that she said, as a white woman navigating the world, not just the United States, she's able to have an easier go at it and have access and doors open to her simply by being a white woman. And when the concept of privilege essentially means it's something that's unearned, something that you can't necessarily acquire, though with pretty you could get surgery and you could do different things to make yourself thinner and more attractive artificially without being born to it. But for the most part, privilege, it talks about things that are unearned benefits. It's the opposite of meritocracy. There's this huge theory that's in life, in the world, the whole bootstrap theories is that everyone works hard and everyone does what they're supposed to do and put in their fair share of hours, they will succeed. And that's not the case necessarily all the time, because there are X factors that help other people go along faster, and those X factors are something that they're just born with. You could just be born with wealth, like Olivia Jade. You could just be born attractive, and then you can just be born white. And so I looked at that essay, and she had a long listing of like 10 to 12, maybe 13, 14 different listings, and 3 stood out to me, and I always talk about it. One is the most obvious one, and this is the one I think is important for people who are white but didn't grow up with wealth, is that and you grow up and go through school, in the history books, and when you look on TV and the media and the magazines and everything that's presented to you from the time you're a child until you're an adult about who is creating society, who is doing the best in society, who is the head, who are the leaders, who are the presidents, who's the head of the corporations, who are the ones who are making the money, the teachers, the police officers, the chiefs, the head of federal agencies, they all are white for the most part in the United States. And it's not just to say because the United States is a predominantly white, well, it's getting less predominantly white country, but along the way there's been other people who have not been white who have contributed to society, but you don't learn about them. And when you do hear about people who are not white, it's usually negative, and it's in a negative context. And so the privilege of knowing and being aware that everything that people who look like you, at least come from the same racial background as you, have been the ones to do everything. And so you're comfortable. And so you don't have the sense of anxiety or insurity or insecurity about entering a field or being able to succeed, because you've had models of success all your life. And so that is one of her privileges, that to point out that when she reads a magazine or she reads a history book, she knows that the people who credited for society are people who are white like her. So the second one that stands out to me also is that when you go anywhere, when you ask for who's in charge, most likely the person in charge is going to be white. And that's less and less so. But however, I know growing up, a lot of times when you go to even a fast food restaurant, you'll have all these middle-aged Hispanic or black, older people working there. But when you ask to speak to the manager, the supervisor, it's a pimply faced white kid. My husband, when he was in college, he worked at in a conference center in our college, and he was doing it to make money because he was a student. But there were a lot of career adults, black people, who were there who would train these young white kids who come through. When I say kids, I mean their 20s, and they would train them. They would become the managers. Kind of like, this person clearly has the skills and ability to manage, but why are they training a white person, and the white person comes to become manager? And you see that time and time again. And so now companies are more aware and people are speaking up, and so it's less and less so. But for the most part, in her essay, is that whenever she asks to speak with who's in charge, it's going to be a white person. And the third one, and the big benefit, well, the third one that stands out to me is that the benefit of the doubt. And that's the one overarching theme through all of this, is that you get the benefit of the doubt of being honest, of being forthright, of being creditworthy, of being having wealth or having access or ability, and just being trustworthy individual. And so you may not appreciate the benefit of that until you don't have the benefit of that. And so in my life, I've had several experiences that they are so hurtful that they are planted in my brain, and they won't ever leave, and I'm always thinking about them. And then you could say you should let it go and not be bitter, but however, when you have a bad experience and it's based on someone judging you based on your race alone, it really has a way of adding stress to your life. And they always say, there's a stat that says that black people and brown people in America have shorter lives just from the stress, just from consuming and absorbing the stress of racism in their lives daily. And so that shortens their lifespan. So that just tells you how it is important to not do these things. And I'll just show you 3 examples that I have. Is like when we the benefit of being credit worthy. So I remember one time my husband and I, you know, I'm a former lawyer, he's a lawyer, but we were at the time 2 lawyers earning a substantial amount of money. We'd go to a real estate kiosk at I think it was Montgomery Mall, a high affluent mall in the county next door, and there's a kiosk, and the guy at the kiosk, we walk up to the kiosk to look at the pictures because we're young married couple, and the guy doesn't ask us, doesn't say anything, doesn't even acknowledge our presence, and we're like, wow, you're missing out on opportunity here, boy. And around that same time, a young teacher, I know later on she was a teacher, a young white woman comes. She's single, it's not a couple, she's by herself, and the guy stops, puts down his pen, and asks her all these questions, grilling her, and see, what are you looking? And then you know what she says? And I overhear, she said, no, I can't afford this. I'm a teacher, I got 4 kids, single mom, this is out of my budget. I just love looking at these pictures. So by just her being white alone, he assumed that she may have the privilege or the ability to afford those houses because she's white. Meanwhile, you have a black couple, and then because we're black, it's like black couple less likely to be able to afford to buy a house. And meanwhile, we were high earning, affluent at that time, not so much anymore, couple, and he was ignoring it. And that happened to us at Jose Bank. I'm going to call them out, in Rockville. My husband needed to buy a suit for, he had a new job or something, and he needed to buy a couple of suits for his new job. And we go in, and the guy says, over there in that direction, he's an Indian guy, so people of color can be, you know, racist against other people of color. It says, all over there. So we're on our own looking for these suits. And a white couple, the woman is the same build as me, same size. She is on similar clothes that I have on them. The guy has on similar dress like my husband. There's nothing separating us other than skin. And the guy leaves his station, comes up and asks him all these questions, going around getting all these jackets and suits, bending over backwards for this couple. And then at the end, they leave and don't buy anything. And I regret this to this day that my husband purchased it, because I really feel like we should have put everything on the table, took all the time to do that, ring it up, let the sale go through, and say, you know what, we want a refund based on the way you treated us compared to the white couple. I really feel like we should have done that. Hindsight is 20/20, but those types of incidents really, really sting. I'll be in my neighborhood jogging with my kid, and one of my neighbors will be passing by, and it's dim, so the sun's set, and we're taking a break, and he sees 2 black bodies on a sofa, on the curb, and his first instinct is to clutch his purse. And he's a man. He's a woman and a young child, but it doesn't matter. We're black. So he grabs his satchel and he holds it closer to him, and he's walking. He picks up his step and he keeps looking behind. It's like, does he really think we're gonna rob him? But in his mind, that's the benefit of doubt. We're not getting the benefit of doubt of being honest people, because it was a white mom and her child sitting on the curb. I doubt he would have done all that wrangling. I mean, he's had it in at ballparks. It's happened to us at churches. When soon as my kids come within a few feet of people's property, they're clutching and grabbing and making sure and going to secure it, because we don't get the benefit of doubt of being honest. We're people. And so that is one privilege that if you may not notice, you may not have wealth, but people are comfortable with you, if you're, you know, and we can let these things go, but it's always a burden on us to let go of other people, see people treating us differently, and just look the other way. It's always a burden on us. Anyway, so I digress. How that impacts online is that in terms of when you're doing something, you're building a business, you're building a presence, sometimes people would take you less credible because of your skin. I had a video, you can watch it here, when I talked about, I created this digital video, a blog dedicated to a specific niche area, telecom, and people, it just didn't get traffic, and people were just leaving it. But the minute I made it anonymous and took my name and face and everything off of it, it instantly became credible. And when people started to guess who was behind the anonymous blog, every single person that guessed was a white man. So it's like, I can present the same information, but so long as a black woman is presenting the information, it's seen as less credible. And that's the benefit of the doubt. And they assume it's a white male. When my face was removed from it, nothing about the information that was being presented had a face or gender to it. All of a sudden, people took it as more credible, and they assumed it was a white male. So that's the white male privilege. And the guy they used to recommend was a Jewish guy. So even though he's Jewish, he's, you know, an ethnic minority. He's still, for the most part, still white. He still has white skin privilege. So, so that's an example of how skin privilege can benefit or hinder you in the digital space. And again, as I said at the top of this, the purpose of this is not to shame people, but the purpose of it is just to make people aware of the various different factors that can impact their ability to grow, and then also to differentiate themselves with that awareness. And then also not take, and also when you're watching advice that you get online or different places, that you be aware of when people grow, make sure that it can fit you, that you're able to plug in and experience the same results doing the same thing, but still being aware that there's other factors that's independent of you or independent of them that may have different results and different outcomes. I hope that was clear. All right, that's it. Thanks for listening. This is JJ Gad. See you next time. Like, subscribe, and share this video if you found it helpful. And if you have any comments, comment below. I love comments. Bye.